Hey, if slowing down gives you a guilt trip, this episode's for you. Today, we're going to talk about toxic productivity and some answers on why we do that.
Yeah, and why we feel guilty when we want to rest and why we're always just constant on the go. And it's really prevalent in our culture.
So hopefully in this episode, you're going to find out that rest is essential and it's not laziness.
It's not laziness.
Stick with us. Hey, so welcome back to the Pursuit of Happy Well podcast. We're so excited that you're joining us. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe on your podcasts in your streaming device. And we're excited for this conversation. We've talked around this a little bit, but today we're going to give it a name. We've heard toxic positivity before. Maybe you haven't. That's another episode. Today, though, we're going to talk about toxic productivity.
Yeah. And I can imagine some people are like, how is productivity toxic? Like, I get stuff done. I love getting stuff done. Also, see my face in the dictionary. This is Kristen Boss, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So to help us understand, like, okay, so what is it? What is define it for us? What is toxic productivity?
Well, productivity in and of itself is a great thing. We and I think a lot of people find meaning and value in what they put out in the world and being like, hey, I feel a sense of accomplishment today. That's a very normal and good feeling. But what makes that toxic? And anytime when I think of toxic, it's when something that is maybe inherently neutral or good and is overused and caused harm in some way.
Okay.
And so I would say toxic productivity is a form of self-harm. And we very rarely know we're actually self-harming when we're in it because it feels productive. We're getting stuff done. We actually can see evidence of accomplishing things and getting things done. So I would say, toxic productivity is productivity that has gone, beyond your margins and your capacity and moved you into a place where you are borrowing from resources you don't have and potentially causing self-harm. And it's a recipe for burnout.
Yeah. Man, okay, so that's what we're talking about today. Sounds like a light topic, easy.
Yeah, easy.
No self-reflection required.
None. I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, so I guess the idea that we're talking about here is the idea that culture even supports that.
Yeah, I even wrote a book on it, Toxic Pivot to Purpose.
See how I put that on a T?
Thank you.
Amazon link will be in the description.
Well, yeah, about the toxic hustle culture. And I think it's everywhere, but I feel like it's constantly in our faces on social media. It's everywhere. Like if you're not, if you're not grinding, you're falling behind. If you're not doing, you're dying. It's just go, 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 go. Constant. What are you producing? What are you doing in the world?
Almost in the sense that if you're not producing, culture has a judgment on you.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Like, are you going for big things, big dreams? I know a lot of women hear your girl boss empire and building the empire. I'm like, but are we forcing that on people who might not want to build empires? They might just want to have a life of peace and meaning and impact. Heaven forbid.
Yeah.
Or thinking that their life as it is not. It's not praiseworthy enough of our culture, so they end up, adopting toxic productivity, like moving beyond their own limitations and being like, I have to keep doing this if I want to matter, or if I want to belong, even.
How much do you think is that toxic productivity piece is internal, meaning it's put on ourselves, and how much is it culturally caught or expected or judged?
I think it goes both ways. I think I wrote about this in my first book, is I really think what's rooted in it is shame of some kind. So, for example, external could be, I see what everybody else is out there doing, accomplishing, the things they're creating and putting out in the world. And I end up comparing myself to what they're doing, they're creating, and then I internalize that or ask myself, why am I not doing that? Why am I not doing those things? And it creates a feeling of shame. And then we try to outrun that feeling of shame by busyness or, producing, being like, oh, I guess this is what I have to do now. So I'm just going to I'm going to hustle it out. So I think it could be both and. I think the person that is a natural hustler that doesn't need maybe the external cues from society, that person, me, feels an internal driver all the time. It's just well, if I'm honest, it's like it's a form of running, really. It's like running from stillness and what might come up in stillness and what I might think about, feel. Yeah. So
Excellent segue.
So let's go do instead anything but this.
Excellent segue. Thank you for that. In the sense of, so instead of, I think in some of our podcasts, we've talked a little bit about the exterior in terms of staying busy. On our podcast, it talks about busyness is not production. It doesn't equal that you're, being productive. So today, I think I would like to dive into, okay, what is this from the internal cues? Like, what is it that we're avoiding from the internal side? So the external stuff, it kind of is mixed into a lot of our other podcasts that we've done before. But today, let's dive in and, okay, what is the avoidance? What is happening there? Why are we deciding to constantly stay in this uber productive place?
Yeah, I think there's like you said, I think the external part is metrics, where we kind of defined like, well, what's a new set of metrics, happy well metrics. The internal is less about metrics and more about worth and even a stress response, how you handle discomfort. And some people are wired to, when they feel a sense of discomfort or stress, they might reach for the ice cream or shopping or scrolling or watching TV or zoning out. I'm not calling you out, Scott.
I was going to say it would be a disservice to our podcast listeners
to not mention Oreos.
Yes. I
knew it.
So hoping. It even came up in our live event that we just did. We talked about Oreos.
Yeah. You guys, we don't even own Oreo. We have no Oreos in our house, but every podcast episode, treadmill and Oreos.
That she knows of.
Oh my gosh. But no, it's this idea of, so there's the external cue is I have to accomplish something to meet a metric. I would say the internal cue is I have to busy myself. And it took me a long time to even realize that this is what was going on. I just knew I enjoyed being busy. I enjoyed getting a lot of things done because it made me feel good, because I get dopamine from that. I get a sense of like accomplishment. And I saw this statement that said, I told my therapist today, I either feel productive or guilty. There is no third option. And I'm like, dang, that hits for me.
Yeah. Unpack that a little bit. So what would,
Yeah. So if I'm not producing, then I have had multiple times, and I think you remember this when I was in my season of burnout, when I noticed I was tired, I had a really hard time honoring that feeling and resting. And because as soon as I decided to rest, it was unbelievable. The internal monologue that just started running very loud the moment I would sit down to rest, like, but I could be doing this, but I could be doing this. I even had, and you've never been this person in my life, but I had this inner critic that would be like, well, Scott's seen you here sitting down reading when other stuff in the house could be done. Like he thinks you're lazy right now. So I would even project my own thoughts about myself and put them on you, being like, oh, Scott thinks I'm being lazy right now. So do you remember there was a season where I had to tell you like, hey, if you see me relaxing, can you tell me good job? Can you tell me can you tell me it's safe here? Because I would feel so unsettled, so guilty. And so, I would say it was for me, busyness or motion for my body, my stress response, I handle when I feel stress, unease, uncertainty, anxiety. I go into motion. I move very quickly. And so that looks like producing a lot of things and making things happen. I feel good when I'm making things happen.
Yeah.
Because if I'm making things happen, then things aren't left up to chance. And that feels terrifying to me.
Interesting.
Yeah. So for me, I think it's like a form of like trying to establish control within myself. Like if I feel helpless, what would make me feel less helpless? Making something, producing something. It has taken me years to be able to even
name that.
Yeah. And understand that about myself for sure.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, and on one side, the production piece is a way of taking life by the reins.
Yes, control. It
Right?
helps me feel like I'm in control.
Yeah. As we've prepared for this podcast, another way that we've looked at this is that productivity, toxic productivity, is a way of not necessarily taking life by the reins, but avoiding what would happen.
Yep. Numbing.
The unknown of if I stop, or what would I feel, what would come up if I were to sit still and not produce, not just about worth, but like what thoughts are going to start coming to my head. And you talked about that a little bit in the sense of like, Scott's going to think I'm lazy, I'm not producing, those types of pieces. But there might be even deeper things that we're not talking about because we're busying ourselves elsewhere.
Yeah, or even not even what thoughts or maybe like what feelings might come up. And for me, it was anxiety. I would feel like this intense restlessness, not like an eager excitement, but like a pit in my stomach. Like somebody who doesn't really struggle with anxiety, they might not know what it feels like. And so somebody asked me, what does it feel like in your body? I said, when you're in an airplane and there's turbulence and the plane drops for a second and your stomach kind of goes weightless for a second. And they're like, yeah. I was like, it's like waking up with that and it not going away. Or it's like, I was like, have you ever gotten a text from somebody that says, we need to talk? And that's it. Or the principal wants to see you and your body is flooded with that feeling. They're like, yeah. I was like, yeah, it's that. But I didn't get a call from the principal. I didn't get a text. I'm not on a plane.
Yeah. I have no justification for why I'm feeling this way.
Yes.
Or at least.
Yeah. In my head. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So for me, busyness, if I was busy, I was moving too fast for that feeling to actually happen in my body. It was a form of self-medication, to be honest.
You said something about busyness when it came to culture, that today busyness is, what was it? Busyness is...
a badge of honor?
I don't know if it was a badge of honor, but I think it was like busyness was today's, did I write it down? Let me see.
Oh, it's like a socially acceptable costume for anxiety.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I think this is the thing that's really hard, and it makes me emotional to say it and think it. Oftentimes the things that are most unhealthy about ourselves, or the ways we are soothing our internal chaos, is we're praised for how we soothe it.
Yeah.
So for me, who's gonna knock me for what I'm producing in the world? If anything, I was getting praised and validation and pats on the back and money would come in, like all this positive reinforcement to stay busy. So why change it if all of a sudden I'm getting nothing but positive reinforcement at the cost of myself,
right,
when it's to my detriment? So I think that's the hard part, is like, how do we have healthy levels of productivity? How do we do that without, completely falling apart?
I think that's key. And what you just said there at the very end about what the difference between being productive, a healthy productive, a sustainable productive,
yes,
and a toxic productive, in the sense that the toxic side is at the cost of your well-being, the cost of your soul, right? Greg McGowan says in Essentialism, he talks about you got to protect the asset.
Yeah.
The asset is your well-being.
Yes.
That if your well-being is not being protected, you're not caring for it, you're not attuned to it, it is going to deteriorate and you will lose production because of that and more.
Yeah. And there is such thing as like the law of diminishing returns, like where you could put, the same amount of effort or more effort, and the return on that work, it becomes lessened with time because you're not producing it at your best anymore. So, the $1 million question from my toxic productive people out there, the people who might identify with me, who are always busy, the calendar's always full, is like, if I remove the work or if I remove the busy, what comes up for me? What comes up?
Should we just leave a pause in the podcast and the YouTube right now for that thought just to sink in?
Yeah.
I just think about that. You had a beautiful moment you told me about yesterday with our son, that we'd come back from school and they had their last day yesterday, even though you're going to be watching this a week later, but they had their last day of school, and we won't tell them about the
topic. Just
but,
for his.
Yeah, just for him. But you had a beautiful moment with him. You're sitting on the steps in our front yard, and it's in the afternoon, and so we're kind of in the shadow of a mountain, and it creates a very picturesque experience. Mm-hmm. And what did you tell him? You're sitting there with him, and what did you ask him to do?
I said, Caden, have you ever taken a moment to just like put your face in the sun and hear the birds? Because all the birds were going. He's like, well, maybe for like a second. I was like, come here, come sit with me. Just, it doesn't take long, just 3 seconds. And he sat with me on the step. I was like, all right, put your face towards the sun and we're just going to listen to the birds for 3 seconds. And counted like 1, 2, 3. And then he was like, at the end, and then our dog shoved her face in between us and all of a sudden like interrupted the beautiful, serene moment. I was like, like Luna. But it was really cute because then Kaden was like, you're right, Mom. That was really nice.
Yeah.
Like teaching him the value of the moment because I'm not great at that.
Yeah.
And so it was a sweet moment.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The idea of like modeling the stillness in that moment.
Yeah. And it was just 3 seconds. We all have time for 3. You can take 3 seconds. I think just the other day we were driving down the street and we saw a woman walking her dog.
Oh, yes. Oh, I loved that. I commented about it. We were I don't even know where we were going. We were driving down the street and this gal was walking her dog down the street. And I just noticed it caught me because when we see people walk around our street, typically they're working out.
Yeah.
They're driven. They've got the earbuds in and they're on a run. They're in workout gear, whatever. We don't see a lot of people strolling on our street. And I think it's because we're kind of on a hill and maybe it's a good workout. I don't know. Any case, so she was walking down the street with her dog and on the sidewalk, and I just saw her and it caught me. And there's probably some more thinking I need to do about why this caught me. But she just leaned over and smelled a flower.
Yeah.
And that doesn't sound, you're probably listening right now and you're like, that's not very deep. But in
she
the
did.
moment,
She took the moment.
In the moment, it struck me. Like I commented on it.
You did. We were driving down the hill. You're like, oh, that woman just stopped to smell the flowers. And I was like, I even remember thinking like, oh, that's really sweet. Like, I think we've lost that. Mm. I think there's a part of us that our culture has lost the ability to stop and smell the roses. Like, we're so busy. Yeah, we move so fast.
Good book on this that we read recently is A Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Oh, so good. By John Mark Comer.
And then one of the quotes he has out of there is that this idea that hurry is a violence to your soul.
Whoo.
A violence to your soul. So not just the idea of like staying productive for your own mental peace, but also the destruction it's causing in your internal soul, in your well-being. Is a powerful and very illustrative way to be like, gut check.
Yeah.
Something needs to happen here.
But on the other side of that, I will say, being able to slow down and take a moment actually requires you psychological safety. And here's what I mean by that. If you're somebody going and grinding 24/7, for me, I was like running on stress hormones for a long time, like adrenaline, cortisol, go, which is like the body operating as if it's under a threat. It's like a form of hypervigilance. It's on. We are not meant to be living on stress hormones 24/7. It is meant to simply flood our system when there is a threat, like a grizzly bear, and then we run away from the grizzly bear. We realize that we are safe. We're like, okay, now I'm safe. And then the stress hormones can leave our body. That's how it's supposed to be. But if you are somebody who is constantly constantly in the chaos of productivity, and therefore your system, your nervous system, your body always feels like it's being chased by a bear. Listen, are you going to stop and smell the roses if a bear is chasing you? No. Right. So of course, like stillness feels deeply unsafe to somebody who has programmed themselves to self-soothe with busyness or is in a constant state of, that fight, flight, a nervous system response. And, there's a lot of talk about that out there, but it's a very real thing. And so this idea of like hurry as a violence to the soul, well, to somebody who is living in a chronic state of stress, stillness can feel like violence to them. And you actually have to learn to establish psychological safety with stillness. And that is something, if you're like, I'm actually genuinely terrified of what might come up for me in my stillness, I would invite you, you want to bring an expert into that. Like there might actually be some underlying trauma. There might be other things there. But yeah, just like, hurry is violence to the soul. Then I wonder, like, what is the opposite? Stillness is medicine to the soul. Stillness is healing to the soul.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And very, very uncomfortable at first.
Incredibly counterintuitive.
Yeah. And it doesn't help that, our culture reinforces that thought that any stillness is potentially lazy and so forth. So if that thought is in your head, allow us to speak to that, to say that stillness is actually vital to your well-being.
Yeah, and I also think I think lack of stillness goes against nature. Like if you're to look at nature, there are seasons in nature. Winter is a stillness. It is necessary.
It's not just a stillness, but it's a growing within, right?
Yeah.
Like it's an internal turning within. I love that. I don't know if we've talked about it on this or if this was on in our Facebook group, we talked about the idea that if a tree, it's specifically we live in Colorado, so we get snow. If a tree did not drop its leaves in winter, it would bear more weight, more snow would get caught on its branches, and then those branches would break. Mm-hmm. And so part of like what's happening there also is, I think, a shedding so that it can bear up.
Ooh, that's so good. That's so true. We see that all the time. Like in the winter when we get snow, like all the leaves are gone, but it's the late spring snow that is so detrimental to our trees. I could go on about this, like you see me panic at our lilac bushes every late spring, because you're right, because leaves that are on, it adds additional weight to the tree. And when snow falls or crisis falls or life happens,
well, it catches more.
It catches more, and then it can't bear up under the weight. And so I love that, that idea that like, I think that's beautiful. And so understanding first, if like nature has seasons, then maybe we should have them too. Like, isn't nature always a lesson to us and for us? And so if nature has a season of stillness and going within, maybe you need it too. I don't know.
Ouch. We could just end the podcast right there.
Okay.
It's a good thought.
But I think so in order to do this, especially if I feel safe about who I am in the world based on my output. Like my output is, right, X amount of these things per day. I do this per day. And I have conditioned myself to have my output be equal to how I see myself, my self-worth. Then we actually have to have different metrics.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of brings us to, okay, how do we redefine this? I don't know if you haven't read it, I don't think. But it's a beautiful book. I think it's an amazing book. It's been around for a long time. You've probably heard this name, but Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the whole thing is fantastic. But there's this idea that speaks specifically to productivity and this idea of production and then production capacity. And he uses an analogy, which is kind of a grotesque analogy, honestly, but it's okay. But he uses the analogy of like this golden goose that drops golden eggs. And if it was all about production, you'd want to force that production as fast as possible at the expense of the goose. Meaning you just cut the goose open and get all the eggs out.
That is.
I'm telling you, it's pretty grotesque, right? Like it's pretty sickening. But is that any different than how we operate in this toxic productivity mindset?
Oh yeah, where it's like the productivity is like allowing the natural rhythms of the goose. That's the output of those eggs. Whereas the toxic is like, how can I force this? Or if we are the goose, we are the asset. It's cutting ourselves open to our own detriment for the sake of higher output.
Yeah. And so he talks about that idea of the golden goose, and he says what we need to focus on, it's not one or the other. It's an equilibrium, a balance. And we've talked a little bit about life balance and there's more to say about that. We think more in seasons and that kind of thing. But what he's talking about here is this idea of production capacity. How do we protect and care for the production capacity of the goose, of ourselves.
Hmm.
How does that happen?
You mean without cutting open the goose?
Yes, without cutting open the goose. Because listen,
Yeah.
because the point is, right, like if we force that out, we're going to get a limited quantity
Mhm.
of output.
Or the goose dies.
It will. That's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
it's going to end. There's a limit.
Mhm.
Whereas if we wait for the natural rhythms and maybe we feed it, we run it, whatever, or we work, if the analogy's starting to break down, but if you think about yourself,
Yeah.
if I focus on me and growing my production capacity,
Yes.
instead
Yes.
of just driving constantly,
Yeah.
I'm gonna by proxy, it's gonna raise my production,
Yes.
but not in a toxic, tearing my soul, violence to my soul type of way.
So some examples of that would be like, all right, what helps my productive capacity, my production capacity? It'd be like, am I sleeping adequately? Like,
I tell you what, that's if anyone is on listening and you haven't focused on just the
sleep.
power of sleep, I tell you what, that in and of itself, I think we just, as a culture across the board, do not get enough sleep.
Yeah. Now, we could probably do a whole episode on sleep, but then there are going to be people, I think we're not there yet, but I know people are like, I love sleep, but then I turned, 45 and my body thought differently. And now I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh crap. I'm really not looking forward to that.
I haven't had an all-nighter since I was 32. What's an all-nighter? The night I don't get up to go pee.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, but going back to it, sleep is a form of improving your production capacity.
Yeah.
Also, it's just like, I also think there's production efficiency. It's like what is adding to the load that's maybe impacting how much I'm able to produce? Is there a way to better streamline this, to make it more efficient? Is there a way, do I need to increase my time? What do I need to increase? My energy? And that often is like with food, nourishment, exercise, sleep. Yeah, that's like caring for the body. Is it
knowledge?
Like, great, I'm going to go and learn some new skills or those things. Another one would be, all right, is it delegation or outsourcing?
Yeah,
do I need to bring somebody in so that, they're adding or contributing to my production capacity? It's a very different way of thinking, and I love it, actually.
Yeah. And so Covey talks about this idea that the production capacity, how we grow that, is really by rest, renewal, and our relationships. Very similar to what we're talking about in the Pursuit of Happy Well and with the Grant study. And there's a lot here. This isn't just like mumbo jumbo, like feel good. These are things that are going to protect your integrity, not in the sense of your word, but your soul's ability to exist as a whole person, instead of a fragmented chaos, torn apart, ravaged.
Well, I also think I'm wondering if there's a little bit of like we've treated ourselves and turned ourselves into machines. Like we see ourselves as a machine. I know this. You know how I know this is because either people are like ignoring that they are a human with a soul that has needs and care, and they don't rest and recharge the battery.
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Sleep when I'm dead, right. This like a very machine type mentality. I'm a machine. I'm just going to keep going. I also see people do this with their emotional well-being is just like,
same. Oh, that's good.
They shut off that part of themselves as well.
That's weakness.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't have feelings, or they expect to conquer their weakness and be like, okay, that is a problem to solve. I will fix that. I will fix my fear, and then I will no longer feel the fear. I'm like, you are not a robot where you can just go in and just push a bunch of buttons and turn off your humanity. Yeah. But so many people, I believe, turn off their humanity in their pursuit of metrics that are killing them.
Yeah, whether it's productive, toxic productivity, or maybe it's avoidance.
Yeah.
Mixed in there. Yeah, that's true. I think that's right.
That's why I love the one saying is like, you're not a human doing, you're a human being.
Yeah.
But so many of us are human doings,
Yeah. When it comes to this idea of toxic productivity, the hopeful switch, the metric shift is that you don't have a well-lived life based upon how much you get done, but based upon the depth that you live.
That's so good. I am this is not by the way, this is not going to be a quick fix being like, all right, cool. I'm just going to learn to like
listen to the episode. Check.
Done. Check. Remember, the biggest thing that we see between personal development and transformation is like the ability to do consistent implementation. And so it might just start with like, if a whole hour of rest feels deeply unsafe with you, think about what I did with my son. Can you do 3 seconds?
Yeah.
To walk outside, put your face in the sun, get some vitamin D, and just listen. Yeah. Put your phone away. It could start so small. And then what you actually do is you're creating small doses of evidence that your body can, in fact, feel safe 3 seconds at a time, if that's what it has to be for you. And this idea of new metrics, by the way, I wish it was a switch. I wish it was a switch. I really do. Because it's not. When you've lived by metrics for so long, it's the rewiring it takes to be safe with a different set of metrics is work I never knew I had to sign up for. Like, and it's interesting because when people checked in with me, therapist friends are like, how are you? And I was able to tell them. And they both said, do you know how I know you're good? Is because you didn't answer with metrics, with numbers, Kristen. You actually answered with like how you were feeling, how you were processing things. You were having an honest human moment. So this idea of like, hey, are you willing to build new metrics? You can be willing, but the feeling of the new metrics is the work.
Right.
Because you will want to run back to the old metrics that used to comfort you.
Yeah.
And you will have to redefine, okay, why do these new metrics, how do they serve me better as a human being and not a human doing?
Yeah, we didn't mention this earlier, but when we were talking about toxic productivity, one reason I think we get stuck in that loop is because the body, the mind, always seeks the familiar because it knows it's in its way, it's safe, it's familiar. I know what to expect. It's not unknown. It's not going to surprise me. And because of that, I can maybe close out or not have to deal with potential fear of the unknown. So even if something is deeply toxic and tearing you apart, but it's familiar and it's a rhythm that you have built and is now supported by culture and is now supported by praise, that's going to be very easy for your body to go back to very, very easy to fall right back into it. So when you try to sit still for the first time, or you try to change a metric, it's going to feel very forced, unknown, scary, and your body's going to want to run from it.
Oh, it's horrible.
Even if it is like the best thing for you.
Yeah. And it is the best thing for you. And it's it becomes your sacred and beautiful work.
Yeah. So why don't we give a couple ideas of things that one that comes to my mind, and then you can give an idea of some things that we do to kind of fight that toxic productivity hamster wheel. Yeah. I think one that is very underrated, and I started doing a long time ago. I don't do as much now because I work from home, but when we used to go in office, there's studies that talk about, I think we've talked about this in another podcast, but there's studies that talk about taking a 15-minute break every hour just to get up and walk. You don't have to go on a long walk. It doesn't need to be fast. You don't need to do CrossFit. Nothing against CrossFit, as we talked about at our live event. But just to get up and stretch your legs, to get out of staring at a screen, if that's what you do, to get out of your seat, to get the blood flowing. They actually have studies that show that greatly increases your productivity and also increases your well-being. And the flip of that, the cultural response is to work through that break.
Yep.
And they have studies that go with that say actually productivity tanks when you approach it that way.
Again, it feels very counterintuitive.
Right?
Yeah. Usually our healing does feel counterintuitive.
Yeah. So what's you give one?
Just create like, where are you going to a calendar space? Like for somebody who's on the go and constantly like, where are you intentionally creating buffer? So for me, there was a time where I would work back to 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 back. And then I finally had to put this as a rule on my calendar or sent it to my, like the person who manages my calendar, I'd be like, hey, I need you to at least put a 15 to 30 minute buffer between these meetings just for me to breathe, eat, see to my human needs, So just like, where are you, if you can find a 15-minute margin this week somewhere, where would you put it?
You can even schedule it.
You can schedule it.
And you can call it the smelling the roses while walking your dog. Like we talked about earlier.
I don't see that fitting on a Google Calendar, but
I guess
maybe just call it smell the roses.
There'll have to be
smell
a
the
description.
roses.
Yeah,
smell the roses. Yeah.
Yeah. Another idea is in the mornings, no screens, using it as an intentional reset before all the input. The minute we wake up, we're constantly inundated, right? And reaching for a screen the minute you wake up does not help that.
That's a lot of input. And honestly, I noticed that it actually does create anxiety for me. And so if that creates anxiety for me, and knowing that my way of solving for anxiety is to produce, I'm automatic. What I'm doing is I'm exposing myself to a cue.
The minute
I wake up.
Wow. That sucks.
Well, it's like, yeah, like it'd be like a recovering alcoholic being like, would you wake up and have a glass of whiskey on your nightstand and like you have to actually go to battle with yourself first thing in the morning?
Staring at it right there.
So don't do it.
Yeah.
Remove it.
Same with food.
Yeah.
You have a food deal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I hope that this conversation helps you just get some words. And more though, I also hope, we have a free Facebook community that you can find. It's the Pursuit of Happy Well Facebook community. We'd love to have you in there. We can continue this conversation. And these aren't meant to be like a full, complete, everything's in a tidy bow. I hope this spurs conversation for you.
Yes.
And that you take it to a friend, a loved one, you take it to the Pursuit of Happy Well Facebook community, whatever it might be, to have those conversations and take it a little bit deeper. Hey, this is what struck me. This is what struck me. But the new segment that we've implemented the past couple weeks.
Do.
Yeah. Insert sound pad noise.
I did it.
Okay.
Do. Happy Well homework.
Oh my gosh. Low budget.
All right.
So you want to give Happy Well homework?
No, I did the jingle.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so here's the Happy Well homework. And it goes in tune with what Kristen was saying about, 3-second stillness. And if you already do this, maybe see if you can make it a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't do this, if you are caught in this toxic productivity loop, spiral, spinning hamster wheel, what does it look like for you to set aside 1 hour this week? 1 hour this week, no phone, no input. You're not reading. You're just still for an hour.
Wait, they're just going to stare at a wall for an hour? That's horrible.
They can be outside.
Okay.
Here's what I'm saying. No, hold on. Listen.
I'm having so much resistance
I know,
to this.
she's already
I'm
against
like,
it.
do nothing?
It's not do. So that is the conversation.
Yeah.
If I'm not producing, I must be doing nothing.
Oh, dang, Scott. Call me out.
That's not what's happening though, is it?
No, but you said, what did you say?
No, hold on.
It's funny.
We're redefining the metric.
Yeah.
That not producing does not equate to doing nothing.
Yeah.
What you're doing is being still. What you're doing is resting. What you're doing is restoring. What you're doing is increasing your productive capacity. What you're doing is taking your fragmented self and making it whole again. So that was not in our notes. But
I know, but my brain is like, wait, hold on. I'm like, can they paint? Can they?
Let me give you some options here.
Do some options. I'm like I'm freaking out.
Clearly. I was getting there and you didn't even let me get to the options before you were like hammered down. No. So I want to be very careful with this because if you are in a toxic, productive mindset, anything you replace in that hour could potentially grow into toxic productivity. So what I mean by that is if you're like, well, I go on a walk. It's not a workout.
Yeah. I remember you doing that with me once.
It's a stroll.
Yeah.
It's a stroll. It's not a workout. This is not your workout time. This time is for you to become whole again.
Ooh, take off your Apple Watch. Don't count your steps.
Oh gosh. Okay. That even hits me. But I need the steps.
Yeah.
I want it. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. If a stroll is just a stroll, take off the Apple Watch.
So there's that. If you want it to be, painting by numbers, or gym art or whatever, I think that works as long as it's not like I need to complete this. As long as it's not a goal where you sit down and like this quadrant needs to be done by the end of my stillness time.
Oh wow, there we go.
Do you know what I'm
We're
saying?
just calling each other out. But yeah, no, it's true. Just letting it be.
The goal is to be still. You don't have to stare at a wall. That's not the point. The point is to say, let's greatly reduce the input.
Yeah.
And not put a metric to what complete or what needs to be accomplished in that time.
No assigning any output. So minimize as much input as possible and letting go of any output.
Gosh, our Happy Well homework was like a podcast in and of itself. So to bring that back, Happy Well homework this week is 1 hour. And if that's too long, if you try it and you're like, can't do it. Okay, try 30, try 20, try 15. Mm-hmm. But really, really try and close it off. Sit in stillness, allow your soul some rest.
So good. All right, friends, we hope this was helpful to you. Hope it sparked some conversation. And as always, this isn't something we think about. This is something we do. So go live happy, go live well. We'll catch you next time.